This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Coveil. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today has over 1 million books in print. John Miller, author of the classic bestseller, QBQ, The Question Behind the Question, Practicing Personal Accountability at Work and in Life. I'm very fortunate to have John today. Let's jump right in to the question behind the question. I noticed in your background, your father, a wrestling coach. I grew up with 3 guys that were wrestlers, brothers. I think 2 of them were state champions. So I got beat up as a guy who didn't wrestle a lot when I was a kid. So I kind of understand the wrestling mentality a little bit. I would love for you, look, I've seen the one great line that you say, look, you got to be good enough to beat the ref. But take me back in time, as we're going to talk personal responsibility, to have a father as a wrestling coach. I mean, this is personal responsibility 101.
That's true, Michael. Thank you. And thank you for letting me visit with you today. Absolutely. When you're out on the wrestling mat, you cannot hide behind the team. The importance of recognizing still in this day of teamwork, the power of one and not hiding behind the team. And I didn't know I was learning that, of course, in the 70s when I was out on the mat. But it's the only sport where you can you can win that day and your team can lose and you still go home feeling great. And if your team wins and you lose your match, you can go home feeling awful. It's not like basketball. It's not like football. It's an individual contributor kind of sport. And when you're out there and you do something dumb or get caught or you get pinned, you can't blame the team. And it's all about personal accountability. And I didn't know growing up as the son of the Cornell University wrestling coach that I was learning that, but I look back on it now and I can see why I'm now out teaching personal responsibility in all that I do as an author and a speaker.
It traces directly back. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Totally. I mean, that's where I came up with the beat the ref concept, and I've had more people over the years tell me, they love this, they love that, but that beat the ref thing really stuck with them because of our society, I think. You can watch on any NFL Sunday. You can watch, and it just happened a few days ago, you can watch on any NFL Sunday, the team that loses blame the last call, the last action by the referee. Now, wait a minute, coach. You had 59 minutes before that to score 1,000 points. But you lost by 2 points, and you're going to blame the last official's call at the end of the game? Come on, you can be better than that. And that's what my dad taught me. He said, when you come off the mat, no blame in the official, even if he made a couple mistakes. Always ask, what could I have done differently? How could I have been better today? Looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I did lose. The referee did make some questionable calls, but boy, I could have scored 6 more points if I'd done this, or that. Personal accountability is what we talk about around here.
I have a gut level feel what I think the answer is, but I don't know. And you're right in the heart of this world of personal responsibility, especially out teaching, coaching, mentoring. Has there been a shift? I'm curious. So if I look back over the last, let's say, 30 years, have we gone from more personal accountability to less? Or are we about the same? Or are generations doing the same stuff each generation? Speak to me some about that.
I was born in 1958. So I'm 58. I look at our world today, and I think it's not quite as crystal clear as, nobody's accountable like they used to be. I mean, come on, we've had blame for 2,000 years. But I just recently saw an article where a younger person pointed fingers at my generation and saying the problem with the older people is they don't understand complicated. So the blogger went on to explain that the world is more complicated today. So the minute I hear somebody say it's complicated, I feel like there's an excuse coming. Or there's a but. Or, there's confusion and complexity and complication here. So I can't just do the simple. I can't just do the simple, which is own it. Stop blaming. Take accountability. I did an interview recently where they talked about politicians who have that amazing inability to just say, I did it. So what we see today is maybe the world is a little more complicated with all the technology we have going on. However, the human creature hasn't changed. I respect people who say, I made the mistake, I own the mistake, I'll fix the mistake, and here's what I learned from it. That's leadership, and that works at work, and that works at home. So in spite of how the world around us has changed, and some of these younger folks might think it's more complicated, hey, old man, it's too complicated, it's not simple anymore. Well, I still think personal accountability is like that hot knife and butter. It cuts right through all the junk, and it's better for me just to say, I'm accountable, what can I do to fix it, how can I move forward from here? And that's what the QBQ message is all about.
John, let me go into a classic example that you've used quite a bit, but some people might not be familiar with the QBQ method. I can think back to a meeting that I was at a few years ago. I think it was in Santa Monica, California, and I was at a Ritz-Carlton lobby with a very affluent fund manager. And he asked for the staff to come over, and you're going to kind of laugh at this, but he asked for the staff to come over, and he said, hey, I'd like a Starbucks, chai tea latte or something like that. And the staff said, well, sir, we don't have that here. And he handed the attendant at the Ritz-Carlton a $100 bill and said, can you please go get me one? I would love for you to tell your example, though, because I think your example is a little more real than my fun one.
I think you're referring to the Jacob and the Diet Coke story.
Yeah. It's such a simple story, but it really brings people into your world.
Sure. It's funny. As the QBQ book and the newest version launches, I just posted on Facebook a picture of the brand new QBQ book, the brand new QBQ workbook that we've just built to go with it, and a picture, Michael, of a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke. And I put that online everywhere I could today because our fans know what that Diet Coke means. The story is this. I walked into the Rock Bottom restaurant on a Thursday. They were really busy. It was lunchtime. No booths, no chairs available, no tables. So they put me over at the bar. That's fine. I'm sitting there for a couple of minutes. I'm in a rush. Nobody's waited on me yet. After a few minutes, a young man runs by me carrying dirty dishes on a tray. He's all kind of weighed down. He's heading to the kitchen. And he stops and he looks at me. He says, sir, have you been helped? And I said, no, I haven't been, but I'm kind of in a rush. And he said, well, I can help you. What would you like? I said, I just want a salad and a roll. And he said, and what would you like to drink? And I said, I'll have a Diet Coke. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, sir, we don't sell Coke products, just Pepsi. I said, no, thanks, I'll have water and lemon. Great. So he's off. A few minutes later, he's back with the salad and the roll and the water and the lemon, and I thank him, and he disappears. He didn't need to return, and that's kind of a key point, Michael. I was already happy. I mean, businesses are always trying to please their customers. I was already totally satisfied. He didn't need to come back. But all of a sudden, I feel the wind of enthusiasm blowing behind my back. The long arm of service stretches over my shoulder and places right next to my plate a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke. And I was so caught off guard, I think I just muttered, thank you. And you're welcome, sir. And he takes off. And I remember thinking, wow, hire this guy. And Michael, I don't care if you went to college, because I think corporations are way off base with their requirements for hiring. We should be hiring character, not college degrees. So I called this guy over because I sensed character. And I said, I thought you didn't sell Coke products. And he says, we don't. I said, well, where did this come from? He says, grocery store around the corner. My Diet Coke, Michael, came from the grocery store around the corner. I then said, who paid for it? And he kind of straightens and smiles and says, oh, I did, sir, just $1 out of my tip money. good salesperson. And then I said, wait a minute, you've been awfully busy. How did you have time to go get it? And he proudly says, oh, I didn't go get it, sir. I sent my manager. And people love that punchline because who in life really wouldn't want to send our boss? On some days, we would love to just send our boss. He sent his manager to go get me a Diet Coke. And when I asked him why would you do this? He looked kind of disappointed. And he says, I'm sorry, sir, didn't you want one? Oh, well, let me write that down. Get the customer what they want. Do things for others I don't have to do. Go above and beyond, and you will do well. And that's what the Jacob and the Diet Coke story is all about. His name, I found out, was Jacob Miller. I love his last name, don't you, Michael?
Yeah, a little synchronicity, serendipity there, huh? But, he could have handled that and I'm sure other people do still to this day, he could have gone, and I'm going to use a little bit of your terminology, he could have gone with an IQ, he could have gone with the incorrect question. He could have gone the wrong direction, right? I mean, so many people do go the wrong direction, but either by training or instinct, he knew to do something different. Yes,
he absolutely did. Because as you say, and you've got the language down, because we teach people to not ask IQs or incorrect questions, but to do ask QBQs or the question behind the question. He could have asked, when is the customer going to learn to read the menu? Bad customers. Why don't we get more help around here? He could have asked, when is management going to get the products the customers really want? He could have asked, whose department is this? Because he was running by me, and he wasn't supposed to be covering the bar. He could have said, whose job is this? Not my problem, not my department, not my job. But I don't think any of that went through his head. He saw me. He sensed something, like maybe I was in a hurry, I hadn't been helped, and it was his nature, possibly, or training, like you said, just to say, hey, can I help you, sir? And he helped me, and then he went above and beyond by sending the boss to get the Diet Coke. And that's a story that I've shared in every keynote engagement I've ever shared over 20 years now. I mean, the story's not that old, but over the years, I've shared stories about people going above and beyond, and that's critical, because in this world, it's so easy to become entitled, play victim, blame others, procrastinate, wait for someone else to do it. But still, in this day and age, people who rise above, they are the ones that simply ask, what can I do to serve people? And that's what QBQ is all about, is asking, how can I make a difference today? I jotted this down today. Accountable people blame no one, not even themselves. And that takes a second to digest. Why don't you tear it apart for people? Well, thank you. That's sort of a psychology, almost psychological statement. It's a self-esteem issue, if you will, meaning I make mistakes. You probably make mistakes, Michael. We all make mistakes. That's okay to make a mistake. The question is, have we learned from it? Do we move forward from it? None of this is new. We all know we make mistakes. What I have found over the years, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm a Cornell grad who sold training for 30 years. I've sold training for 30 years. I've worked with people. And if you're a student, Michael, as you are, I bet, of people, you start to learn a lot without ever going off to school to get a psychology degree. And selling is the greatest of brain surgery when we're selling, persuading, and helping people understand that we are the best. Psychology is in this statement. Accountable people don't even blame themselves. And all that really means is, okay, I made a mistake. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to wallow in self-pity. I'm not going to play victim. I'm just going to be able to forthrightly admit it. I made a mistake. Here's what I learned. I'm going to move forward. That's what the statement in the QBQ book is all about when we say accountable people don't blame others and they don't even blame themselves. I mean, look, we can only change ourselves. That's what we're in control of. We can change me, so to speak. I can change I, but it's that interior looking inside. There's all the other stuff is just somebody else. There's always going to be somebody else. There's always going to be a mess out there. But if you just accept and take a step, an action on your own, you're light years ahead of many other people. Absolutely, because the world is caught up in, again, blame, victim thinking, entitlement, feeling sorry for myself, handouts, wanting something for free, blaming the person next in line. It's just everywhere. I mean, we run a business. We ship product because, we have 5 different titles in books, and we do training, and we ship product out the door. And my shipping company has been with me 15 years. They're an independent organization. We have contracted for them to ship everything we sell. And they do a great job. But guess what, Michael? On some days, they don't ship something on time. Or they miss an email that we've sent to them about shipping something. Now, here's the key. Then I have to turn, or Kristen, my daughter who works with me and goes around the country speaking on QBQ. That's great fun to have a child working in the business with you. We have to then turn to the customer who's upset because something didn't get shipped. And the human nature in me wants to say, yeah, but the shipping company didn't do their job. But all the customer wants to hear is, I'm sorry, I'll fix the problem. And that takes discipline because our world does not teach that. So we have to learn that on our own to rise above, discipline our thoughts, and say, I'm sorry, I'll fix the problem. Not, I'm sorry, but someone else didn't perform.
Let me ask a little bit more about you, kind of a side tangent. You say you're 58 today, but you are bringing a tremendous amount. Look, we've never spoke before, but I can quickly feel the passion. Were you this passionate at 25? Were you this passionate at 15? When did the switch flip? Were you always like this?
I'm chuckling because my dad used to call me hyper, and I turned it into a career. Johnny, don't be so hyper, he'd say in the 70s. I was born in 58, so I can just hear him in 72 when I was 14. Johnny, don't be so hyper. I probably had a touch of ADHD, but that has served me well over the years, because when I first went into the business of selling training, Michael, I'll give you a brief background. I came out of Cornell in 1980. My wife and I got married immediately. She was 19 and I was 22. We just passed 36 years. I joined a big company called Cargill. I was a grain trader. I had an agricultural degree. They're a fine company. But 5 years later, I realized I was not very good at sitting behind a desk. There's that hyper young man, 8 to 5. I hated it. But one day a friend said something to me. He said, why don't you get into sales? And I said, oh, sales, I could never sell. Well, the short story is I started interviewing and I landed a position selling leadership training in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I owned that territory for the next 10 years. And that's when everything took off for me, because people came and went from that training company. Well, there's no four-color brochures. There's no advertising. Corporate doesn't give us any leads. The product is too hard to sell. It's too expensive. Well, 10 years. And I was the number one sales rep for the last 6 years I was there. I had found my niche. I made the calls. I was just telling somebody recently, if you're in sales, not everybody's a prospect, but everybody knows a prospect. So selling is a lot of just getting out and talking to people and asking, what do they do? What do their parents do? What do their family members do? And selling with abandon by talking to people and finding those leads. And it turned out that was my gift. I could get out there and find leads and then call those executives at 6:30 in the morning before their assistant came in, get them on the phone, make that appointment, go see them a week later, persuade them to buy my training. And my life I went from bored and depressed at the 8 to 5 job to absolutely on fire. And as I tell groups, my Fridays became my Mondays became my Fridays. And if you think through that, it makes a lot of sense. On Friday, most people were saying, yes, it's Friday. I was thinking, oh man, it's Friday. I've got so much more to do. And on Sunday night, most people are depressed because it's Monday. Monday's coming. And back in the 80s and 90s when I was selling training, on Sunday night, I started thinking, okay, who am I going to call tomorrow? Who do I need to sell? Who do I need to get a hold of? What are my goals? My dad used to call me hyper, but this high-energy personality has served me well over the years selling training.
Well, your Sunday night story, you've got a brother in arms here. I never reach a Sunday ever in the last 20 years, and I say, oh my gosh, Monday's tomorrow. I'm always like, gosh, it's finally here. People will answer their calls or answer their emails finally. You just mentioned being bored and depressed. However, I'm curious, even in a bored and depressed state, did you ever have a victim mentality in your psyche ever?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you honestly, I've never had that question before, so I appreciate a fresh, insightful question. That's very challenging, and the first story that comes to my mind is Cargill had transferred me to St. Louis in 1984 from Montana, and my wife and I immediately hit an emotional wall. We had sticker shock for housing back then. I mean, you'll love this, Michael. We sold our house in Montana for $45,000. And we got to St. Louis, and the house that we found the best we could do was $67,500. And believe me, in 1984, that was sticker shock. And then I could no longer walk to work. I had to drive 11 miles to the Cargill office, which was different than what I had done in Montana. And the office, I was a branch manager, but I only had half an assistant. That sounds terrible, but there wasn't enough to do. I had a part-time assistant, and I was trading grain, but there wasn't enough to keep me busy. And that was June of 84. And by August or September, I couldn't take it. And instead of wallowing in victim thinking, I wrote my regional manager a long, long letter. I still believe I have a copy of it, telling him why we needed to get me out. And a few days later, he called from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he said, John, I accept your recommendation. We will close that branch office. And so a few months later, I got transferred up to Minneapolis with my wife and one daughter named Kristen, who's now a speaker. A year later, I left and I started selling training in Minneapolis. But I look back at that St. Louis experience where I could not get up to go to work. I hated my days. I had nothing to do, really. And I could have just sat there and taken my salary until I got the next transfer, but I couldn't take that anymore. I needed to be productive. I needed to be of value. So when I sent him that letter, I had no idea what would happen, but the executives read my letter and accepted this 26-year-old kid's recommendation to close the entire branch forever in St. Louis, Missouri. I guess I haven't played victim very often.
Let me go into some big picture macro of your world, just as a refresher for people, the QBQ, the question behind the question. A lot of this is really, it's a very simple concept, but there's a lot behind it. It's not about who, when, or why. It's about what and how. Give that broad overview, John, for people that either have read your book a while back or need that refresher.
What we've found is people who get things done tend to think in the what and how terms. A couple quick examples of the questions not to ask. Questions that begin with why tend to lead to victim thinking, and they sound like this. Why is this happening to me? So take that Cargill St. Louis example, and I could have sat there for 2 years and said, why is this happening to me? Why don't they give me more to do? Why don't I ever get a break? The minute I start asking why me, I have fallen into victim thinking, and I love to challenge groups with the question, when I play victim, who am I serving? And I always warn them, careful with your answer, because sometimes they want to say, oh, I'm just serving me. No, I'm serving nobody when I play victim, and I know I'm in the land of victim thinking when I'm asking why me kind of questions. The second type of question to not ask is the when question, because that leads to procrastination. So if you think about it, inside a big organization, when will they tell me what's going on? When will someone tell me what to do? When will I get more training? When will they get back to me? When will I get the information I need to make a decision? When will somebody give us the vision? And how about this one? When will somebody clarify my job? All those when questions, the minute I asked them, I really just said, I'm going to sit still and do nothing and take no action and take no risk and add no value because that's everybody else's job but me. Procrastination is a bad thing, and the bigger an organization gets, the more you have it. And then lastly, the trap is blame. So we have victim thinking, procrastination, and blame. And the blame comes from whodunit questions. Who dropped the ball? Who missed the deadline? Who made the mistake? Whose dumb idea was that? The minute I ask a who question, I have chosen to seek culprits. I wrote a book called Outstanding, 47 Ways to Make Your Organization Exceptional, and we put in there a whole chapter on, in outstanding organizations, Michael, managers do not seek culprits. We are always looking to improve systems and processes and the environment and solve problems, but we do not seek culprits. Victim thinking, procrastination, and blame come from why questions, when questions, and who questions. And where I learned all this was sitting in sessions in Minneapolis, St. Paul for 10 years as I sold leadership training. I would listen to people, and I'd have people say, why don't my salespeople call in on time like they're supposed to? When are they going to make more calls? And they would start asking these externally focused questions. And one day I thought, well, what if we asked the question behind the question, turned it around, looked in the mirror and said, what can I do to be a better coach for my people? So that's how I found the QBQ idea, developed it. That's where it came from. Now we simply teach people to ask questions that begin with what or how, contain an I, and focus on action. And if you notice, if you listen to this podcast again and again, you will hear something. Every single QBQ I've posed had the word I in it. I. What can I do? Because I can only change me.
John, I'm thinking about current events right now, and I'm thinking in the last 6 months, the last year, political correctness has become all the rage in media coverage. I've learned a new expression called microaggression. I've seen quite the controversy unfold in the National Football League. People are bringing certain political beliefs, and they may or may not be right. But what I would love for you to expand upon is that, you know, you can have these interior personal feelings, but to me, it starts to feel like people aren't realizing that it can hurt you in the long run. I mean, you might have your personal political belief, but if you bring all of that to work or you bring that out to the public, on everything, unless that's like, unless you're a politician. It seems like people are trying to be so transparent and so honest about everything. And then, of course, I see ratings on the NFL dropping, and you start to say, why are NFL ratings dropping? Speak to what I'm trying to get at right now. It seems like we're trying to be too transparent as a society.
I'm sure you've heard the phrase laptop warrior. It just kills me. I've said this for years, and I didn't create this idea, of course. You probably said it too. But you cannot win an argument on Facebook. You can never, ever win an argument online, because the laptop warrior always can have the last say. And the amazingly vicious, mean things that people say to each other, and then they probably go downstairs and have dinner with their family. They're probably okay people. But this social media thing, a little scary, because it's given everybody permission and a vehicle for saying anything they want with absolutely no repercussions. There's no consequence to being mean and saying negative stuff. It's gotten out of hand. Here's the personal accountability piece. I look at all that and I say, okay, I have political views, I have opinions, but there are times to share it and there are times not to share them. And so what can I do to make sure I am sharing appropriately? What can I do to ensure I am treating people with respect? I mean, a couple years ago, because I voiced a disagreement with our current president's policy, Michael, a policy, not him as a person, a policy, a woman came online and called me a racist. And what did I do? I normally would never fight back. I posted a picture and I said, meet my family. Michael, I have 3 black daughters, 3 African-American daughters. She called me a racist. I said, meet my family. She immediately disappeared. I never heard from her again. The things we say to people because we've been granted this power through social media, well, it's quite immature. It's quite immature. And I need to make sure I don't get sucked up in that world and come back and say, okay, what's right? What's good here? How am I treating others?
No, it's a great reminder. I think I sometimes, I try to stay logical. I try to keep it as you say, it's kind of, you want it to be a policy debate. You don't want personalities and stuff. But the reality is, if you're online and somebody feels like they're losing the policy debate, it immediately goes personality. And then you're right back to where you said, the laptop warrior, and then it's game on for, crazy next whatever.
That's right. I remember last year during the NFL season, I had made a huge mistake. Let me tell you something. My dad, as a Cornell wrestling coach, had a lot of virtue, and he taught a lot more than wrestling. He taught good, solid principles of successful living. Be fair to others, treat others with respect, don't blame the ref, that kind of stuff. So last year, I piped up and made a comment online about, I think, a Green Bay Packers player and what poor sportsmanship he had just demonstrated. For the next 2 hours, I got raked over the coals on Facebook from Packers fans. I was suddenly Hitler's cousin because I had criticized a Packers player. And what he did was poor sportsmanship. They couldn't say that. They had to attack me. And I'm not picking on Packer fans here. That could happen with any team.
I want to bring up stress, and stress as a choice. It's a fairly controversial view. I could say that to most people, and I just think they're going to look at me like I'm nuts. But it's also very, I'm calling you from Asia right now. It's a very Eastern thing to say in many ways. But why don't you speak about stress as a choice?
Well, it really does tie straight back to blame. If I'm in a bad mood and I blame my wife for my bad mood, I'm not doing the appropriate and accountable thing. So, wait a minute, I'm feeling a bad mood, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling stress, I'm feeling disappointment. Am I really going to look outside of myself and blame people and events around me? Now, don't get me wrong. Let's just analogize to business and selling. If I'm working on a big sale, a big deal, I think it's going to close, and suddenly my buyer changes companies and is gone, and I'm left with somebody who doesn't want to buy my product. It's okay to be disappointed. But we have to recognize that after a couple of minutes of venting, I have a choice. Wallow in victim thinking and stress and pain and emotional negativity, or ask, what can I do today to move forward? As I've said online many times, winners fall forward. It's just that simple. People who win fall forward. And so what they don't do is when they're feeling stressed, they don't blame the world around them. They look inside and say, well, what can I do to move forward? How can I process this disappointment? What can I do to help my emotions move from negative to positive? Stress is a choice is something I have taught for many years. And in the QBQ book, there's that story where a woman I spoke in Toronto at FedEx, a couple thousand salespeople, and she emailed me that afternoon. She said, I don't agree. I don't agree that stress is a choice. The world does it to me. And I thanked her because I treat, all my customers with deep respect. And she said, I'll get back to you in a month. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll get back to you. Well, a month later, she emailed me and she contritely said, well, you know what? Stress is a choice. I realized every time I was feeling negativity, I was doing it to myself. So it's a simple concept that makes people realize if I'm not having a good day, I shouldn't blame those around me. That's personal accountability.
When you say stress is a choice, you're not trying to diminish the impact of stress. You're getting people to start to feel and understand how can you get around it? How can you solve it? How can you deal with it? And if you say stress is a choice, that causes everyone, if immediately disagree, they stop and pause and say, I got to think about that one.
Well, in the Raising Accountable Kids book, we have a chapter titled Family Stress is a Choice. And so if you look at families today with people rushing off to soccer games and guitar lessons and dance lessons and whatever, and nobody's home throwing a ball in the backyard or on a swing set. I drive through our neighborhoods the past couple of years. There are no kids. I don't know where all the kids are, Michael. Oh, they're off to their programs. And so then I can just try to picture mom and dad being burned out. Well, gee, mom and dad, you did it to yourself. Now, we're not telling anybody they shouldn't have their kid in dance and guitar and soccer because we've done all that. But we have to recognize that the world's not doing it to me. I created the tension. I created the stress.
John, I'm holding in my hands the QBQ Workbook, a hands-on tool for practicing personal accountability at work and life. The website is qbq.com. The main book is QBQ. And I know you're not going to tell me, but because I'm the proud owner of a 4-letter domain name, you are the proud owner of a 3-letter domain name. And I know you're not going to tell me how much that one cost.
Michael, if we have time, it's a fun story. It's a fun story. 1998, I got that website because a guy had it for a limo driving company. He had a limo company, and for him it was quality before quantity. And he said to me over the phone, I don't need that thing. I'll let you have it. And he gave it to me.
Wow. What a great story. Fantastic.
Yep.
Everyone can check it out. The books are all on Amazon, qbq.com. John, thank you for taking some time today.
Michael, it's been fun. Thank you.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, Trend Following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.